Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Granantiye Bhurida Janaha. So, in the previous class, we were discussing the topic in which Sri Ramakrishna is telling us, giving an example of illness, especially typhoid. When people were suffering from typhoid in India, they used to have some kind of distaste, and they would not relish food. So that was a sign that the disease is worsening. The moment you develop a distaste, they would rather wish that the taste returns back. That means the typhoid, the danger of the disease is slowly going away. So Sri Ramakrishna says, in a similar way, there are some people who have a distaste for the holy name, repetition of the holy name. Though our scriptures say there should be Name Ruchi, especially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and uh, those who belong to the Vaishnava Sampradaya, they actually express it by saying it is Name Ruchi. Ruchi means taste. So taste for the name of the Lord. That doesn't mean that the name of the Lord is sweet, but it's a symbol. Just as good taste is necessary to relish food, you should have some kind of interest or inclination to repeat the name of the Lord. That should give you some kind of peace. If that happens, then you are saved. So if you develop distaste for some reason for the name of the Lord, even in spite of being told hundreds of times by the scriptures as well as your guru, somehow if you manage to develop a taste for the name, repetition of the name, then you are saved. But if you don't, if you develop distaste to such an extent that you don't relish, not only don't relish, but you have an aversion for the repetition of the name, then there is no hope, no possibility of being saved. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna is saying, and this particular song which we listened to yesterday, Dasharathi is the poet, the Bengali poet. He says, "O Shankari, that you are the great physician, and what a delirious fever I am suffering from. In spite of getting the grace, in spite of the grace of thy holy feet, just because my pride is consuming me in its flames." The pride of the quality of pride or envy and jealousy and all those things, they are transitory, but at the same time they are inflammable. They are consuming in its flames. What a depraved attachment I have developed for me and mine. So egoism, which results in pride, can destroy a person. So that's why Dasharathi, the poet here, says, how can I sustain my life? Because my desire for wealth and friends is ceaseless. There's no end. I'm seeking more and more wealth, and one of the reasons why wealth attracts friends is that people would like to have friends who are rich and wealthy. Nobody would befriend a poor person or a person with limited resources, a simple person with modest resources. So it's a kind of trap that Mahamaya has set, that my desire for wealth, and corresponding to that, my desire for more and more friends, it is ceaseless, and that is drowning me. According to the poet, he says, I have dug the well. In the previous poetry we saw, he says, I have dug my own well of uh, uh, despondency or maybe destruction. I was digging, and then later on I realized that I've dug it so deep that I can't come out now. So while I was digging, I didn't realize. So also, my desire for wealth and friends is like this big deep well. So I keep on digging, and then I realize that there's nobody to take me out. I got stuck deep in that well. Then he says Shankari is the uh, female counterpart of Shankar. So Shankari means actually the Divine Mother. O bestower of all goodness, I continue to indulge in all these illusory things, in wrongdoings, committing sinful acts, and so on. And then he says, my eyes are full of the deep sleep of Maya. So Maya is like creating a veil of deep tamas. And I'm not seeing things, even though I know these things to be illusory and bad, but still I cannot resist. My desire for wealth and friends is ceaseless. My stomach is filled with the worm of violence, and I'm revolving as in a whirlpool of illusory action. So violence is, as it were, is become part of my personality. And then finally he says, all these things can be cured. These are all the various ailments which are a result of getting deeply involved in samsara. But in spite of that, if I develop a taste for your name, I can somehow be saved. Sooner or later, the repetition of the name will save me. But unfortunately, alas, I am developing night and day a distaste for your name also. And that is dangerous, because all the other maladies can be cured. But if the distaste for your holy name, I had faith in your name, but now slowly it is going away. And he says, alas, will I be cured of this malady, of this problem? So Sri Ramakrishna seems to be saying, he confirms, or he maybe agrees with this, and says, if you somehow develop taste for the name, there is hope for cure. Therefore, they talk of taste for the name, Name Ruchi, as the Vaishnavas say, taste in the name for the Lord. The Lord's name must be repeated. Call on the Lord by any name, Durga, Krishna, Shiva, or any other. If while repeating the name, your love increases day by day, that is another consequence of repetition of the name. Even if it is mechanical, a day may come when you feel your joy increases, your love towards your Ishta increases. And if that happens, Sri Ramakrishna says there is no danger. You are sure to be cured. His grace is sure to fall on you. So that is what we discussed in our previous class. Now, the topic which M has given now, sincere bhakti versus artificial bhakti. Bhakti, all of us know, is a result of an emotional nature. As we have often discussed, human mind has three faculties, or to be more precise, four faculties. One is the power of thinking, rational thinking, logical thinking, analyzing things, discriminating between good and bad. So they are all powers of the mind which relate to cognition or thinking. Then we have another faculty, which is the power of feeling. It Power of feeling sometimes overpowers us. We do not know the exact reason. We can't logically ask a person, why do you love certain things, why you hate certain things. Love and hate and all these emotions, even the lower emotions, are a result of our emotional part of our mind or emotional nature. So thinking and feeling are two different faculties of the mind. Then we have the power of will or willing. When thoughts are converted into action, it requires a will. So will is a compound of our mind and prana. So it is the pranic force which supports the mind and the cognition. If you just have cognition, but you don't have the support of prana to do things, to put into action what you think, you may make a resolution, but after making that resolution, you don't have the necessary power or the necessary force to force yourself to follow what you believe. And it just should not remain a frozen idea in our brain. If it remains as a frozen idea, then it has to be thought, it has to be by emotion, by willpower, it has to be, we have to convert that thought into action. So there is this power of will. And finally, we have the power which you generate by restraining the thought, the thoughts. I mean, the thoughts are ever flowing. It is like a flow of a river. It has been often compared to a river. A constant flow of thoughts is like a river, ever flowing river. Now you put a dam across, you conserve that flow, the energy of that flow, and a dam is built, the water is stored, and that potential energy used for good purposes, for positive purposes, then that becomes a storehouse of energy. That is what is known as Raj Yoga, the control of the mind. So each faculty of the mind, four faculties, which we have and which we have to develop uniformly, in the sense harmoniously together, are the faculty of thinking, faculty of feeling, faculty of willpower or willing, and the faculty of restraining the mind. So each one gives a different yoga. The Jnana Yoga is a result of using our power of thinking rightly and wisely. The power of thinking, which tells us what to pursue, what not to pursue. What are temporary things that will give us temporary joys and happinesses, or what are the permanent things after which we should go, like the name of the Lord. So you don't require bhakti, you require some kind of logic or some kind of rational thinking to see. That is what Sri Ramakrishna used in the beginning of his sadhana. He was apparently he never went to school, so you may think what kind of logical thinking, but he had a wonderful discriminatory power. I mean, power to discriminate between good and evil. That has nothing to do with formal education. In fact, it is far from our academic education. Formal academic education gives you skills, gives you uh, certain modes, develop certain modes of thinking, rational thinking, step by step thinking, and certain skills, but it does not give you the power of discrimination, which is known as viveka. So that power of discrimination can be had with or without formal education. That is one thing to remember when we follow spiritual pursuits. So Sri Ramakrishna had that in full measure, though he did not have any formal education. He was very, all it needs is a curious mind, a perfect observation, as a scientist would do, and ask questions all the time. If you see a person, even if he has never gone to school, he can learn many things from nature. That's why Swamiji says, when I came to Sri Ramakrishna, I realized how foolish I was. I had to unlearn all the second-hand thoughts I had learned in the university, and then go back to the fundamentals, go back to nature to learn the truths of life. My master in the sense, Sri Ramakrishna, never went to any university, but he had one of the best education which nature, Prakriti herself had given. So Prakriti, how does she teach? How does nature teach us? It shows us very clearly if we keep our eyes, ears, and all the sense organs open. That's why they say in our Vedas, when we say the Shanti mantra, they say, give me a strong sight, a wonderful hearing ability. All the senses are to be sharpened. Contrary to the popular idea that religion asks you to diminish the power of the senses, it's far from true. Controlling the senses is a different thing, but controlling it in a positive way so that it can be channelized in for a higher purpose is a different thing. But that doesn't mean you have to numb your senses. There are people who say that I won't see anything, I won't hear anything, and just uh, put uh, uh, go into a closet and go into a cell. That has never been encouraged in the Indian tradition, though a kind of solitude is being prescribed just to see, just to allow you some kind of peaceful atmosphere to mm, train your mind. That's the only reason why we should go to solitude, not because just to numb the senses, the eyes, the ears, everything should be sharp. Most of our Shanti mantras, most of the mantras in the beginning of the Vedas, they prescribe that. So it doesn't mean that one has to numb the senses. But once the senses are sharp, you have to see that they are not used for useless things. They can be used in a positive way. Everything has a positive side to it or a negative side. Fire by itself is not harmful. A knife by itself, if it is in the hand of a surgeon, it can be very useful, but the same knife, if it is used to kill people, can be harmful. So it's how you use the senses that really matters. So that is why we are asked, or we are told, that to use all our senses for this kind of yoga. So when we come to the using the power of thinking, Sri Ramakrishna, though he did not have formal education, he asked this very simple question, which everybody can ask and everybody can seek answers. All you need to do is to keep your senses open, senses sharp, observe things around you, learn lessons from that. The learning from Prakriti, learning from the university of nature, that is what Swami Vivekananda used. We may realize, how can it be? How can education be got by learning from nature? What does nature teach? Nature teaches is, first of all, develop your senses, or keep your senses open, eyes and ears, and see the effect of certain things which people do and the consequences they have to suffer. All you need is an open mind without any bias. You don't even have to be religious or follow a particular religious ideology. All you need is a very, very strong common sense, which Thakur had, and see what's going on in the world and try to compare it with the previous histories of people who guided mankind. So he had access, he could hear songs, though he did not go to school, he could hear Ram Prasad songs. And then he found some of these poetries, like the poetry which we heard, like the song which we just uh, saw the meaning of, this Dasharati song. So those songs were part and parcel of our culture in those days. So even in the village, even if he did not go to school or get formal education, which he thought was not necessary for him, he was exposed to these things. And when he heard those things, he started asking questions. We don't ask questions. We ask people, our children, to follow religion without asking questions. So why should their power of discrimination be snubbed? You ask him. He asked questions. He said, "What is this Ram Prasad singing?" He says, "I have seen mother. He's singing so many wonderful things, but am I to understand from this that whatever he says is true?" Then he went to the extent of praying to the Divine Mother, just because I'm illiterate and just because these songs, I believe in all these things, are you cheating me? He used to ask the Divine Mother at the end of every day. See the eagerness for knowledge which he had. That is Jnana Yoga. So he asked, are the things which these people, these saints, over a period of time, not just one saint, you take the entire tradition, all can't be wrong. There were so many saints and so many songs being sung, and they have been popular for hundreds and thousands of years. The Vedas have been popular, Gita has been popular. Are all fools, or all the scriptures, are they wrong? So he asked the question, if this is true, what they say is true, then I should have proof, I should have an experience. They say we spoke to God, we had a vision of God, we could talk to God as you talk to a human being, and why can't I do it? So that was a spirit of inquiry. That is what is known as Jnana Yoga. So not that he was an intellectual giant according to Swami Vivekananda. That Sri Ramakrishna, though he never went to a formal university where he would have simply learnt others' thoughts and just not learned the art of original inquiry. But he says Sri Ramakrishna went to nature and got his answers directly from nature without any interference of any professor or teacher who would share imperfect knowledge and confuse the student. He said, I don't want, I'll go to the highest teacher, that is nature. And he got his answers, he got the right answers, and he gave the right answers to us through these books, Gospels, the Gospel and other things. So now The second faculty, as I told you, is the power of feeling. He used that also. We use feelings. We use feelings for human beings. We use even feelings for our pets. Very insignificant things we use. We get upset, we get joy, we get upset. We use our emotions every day without knowing that how much influence it has on us. We feel hurt. We feel hurt when somebody says something. Some insignificant person also can make us feel bad. So that is how our emotions are determining the our life, or determining the pace of our life. So all these things you can see, observe, are happening around us. Just and we are not able to control our emotions. So bhakti yoga is another way, just as Gyan yoga is the way to control our logical thinking, the power of thinking which we have, and use it for, channelize it for a positive purpose. Bhakti yoga is also a way of trying to develop or trying to refine our emotions and use the power of emotions which we naturally have. There's hardly any person, unless he's a very dry person, some emotions are there in every human being. The only problem is we don't know how to use it. If those emotions are used rightly or correctly, it is known as bhakti. It is as simple as that. So there is a sincere bhakti, there is an artificial bhakti. What it is, we will see. And then, of course, as I said, willpower, development of willpower in positive action is karma yoga. So good ideas, when we have good ideas like detachment and things which don't imprison us in our body, in our mind, that desire for freedom, when it is there, you work through some kind of non-attachment, that is known as karma yoga, or you do it as a service of the Lord. When you do that, the work does not bind and further karma is not added to you. So that is karma yoga. And of course, Raj yoga is the art of meditation, where you reduce the number of thoughts, you try to control your thoughts and use the thought energy for a higher purpose. So here, Sri Ramakrishna is now giving some beautiful examples. Though they are revolutionary examples, normally people get trapped when artificial bhakti and what is sincere bhakti. When you see an exuberance of emotion being demonstrated by a person and going to temples, offering and fasting, and you see there are some people who like to demonstrate that they are full of bhakti, and they even express their emotions towards God. Sometimes they may be very artificial, but still people get carried away by that. So God only cares for the state of your mind. What you really, what people really see outside is immaterial, but what you really have in your mind is what God will listen. God, in the sense, our own conscience will tell us how genuine we are. So, Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example here. He says, as the state of your mind, so is your gain. So, it all depends on the attitude. What attitude, with what attitude you are approaching the Lord. What is the real motive of your bhakti? Is it to demonstrate that you are a man full of good emotion and positive emotion towards the Lord and people appreciate you for that? Or is it that you have that inner feeling which is not known to the outside world? Perhaps it is not very apparent to others because it is within. You don't make a show of it. So Sri Ramakrishna gives importance to this particular aspect. He says, as the state of your mind, so is your gain. Now he gives an example. Two friends were walking together and they saw that when they were walking, as it happens very often in India, the Bhagavad part is going on. So whatever be the reason, people conduct these Bhagavad Pathas, especially when somebody is sick or something happened. It is very easy to catch hold of some professionals who recite the Bhagavad, and it's a big event. People are willing to spend thousands of rupees for this purpose. They feel it will earn them some good merit. But here Sri Ramakrishna wants to tell us that it is the motive with which you practice devotion or practice love of God that is more important. It's the motive or your attitude, the inner attitude of the mind, rather than what you do externally. So one of the friends, like most other people, said, "Come, my dear friend, let's go and listen to the recitation of Bhagavata." That is what normally is acceptable in society. So if you are seen in the company of whatever be your own nature, how good or bad you are, people don't really try to find out or don't bother about that. But if you are seen in company of this where recitation of Bhagavata is being done, they think, oh, he's a devoted person. Otherwise, why will he leave everything and come and listen to the Bhagavata? His friend looked in, but shortly left that area, and then he went to the red light area. So he was a man of loose character, that friend. But the thing is, his friend was saying that, no, no, I would rather sit here. And he soon felt disgusted with himself and thought, shame on me. He went there, he left his friend who was sitting listening to this Bhagavata. Whether he was interested or not, we do not know, but definitely was not interested. But uh, just because he wanted to make a show, perhaps he was sitting and listening to the Bhagavata. But the other friend who left him and went to a bad place, an evil place, so he was repentant. He got disgusted. He said, where have I come? My friend is now, while my friend is listening to the story of Lord Hari, look where I have brought myself. And he was repenting and he was struggling to go out of that place. And on the other end, the fellow was listening to the Bhagavata, was also feeling some kind of regret. He said to himself, what a fool I am. This Pandit who is talking Bhagavata is talking nonsense. And I sit here listening to it. How my friend must be enjoying himself. I should have gone with my friend. Now, when both these men died, Sri Ramakrishna is telling this story. He who was listening to the Bhagavata was taken away by a messenger of death, by Yama, and he who had gone to a prostitute was taken to Vaikuntha by a messenger of Vishnu. Now, this is an extreme case, but still it signifies something very important. So, why it happened? So, Sri Ramakrishna is explaining, Bhagavan sees the mind. He doesn't care who is doing what or where one is. Janardana, that is the name of the Lord, knows the innermost thought. So that the idea of the right attitude, making your thoughts and the mind, the action that you are doing, they all should be harmonious. Not only be harmonious, they should be with a pure motive. So whatever actions, even with a pure motive, if a battle is fought, as it happened in the case of Arjuna, he did not incur sin. And Sri Krishna promised him, you will not incur sin because your motive is not bad. You're not doing for greed or anything. You're doing it in self-defense or maybe to establish dharma. So whatever it is the attitude that is important, not what action we are doing that is important. So there is a sect in Bengal which is known as Karta Bhaja sect. That in that sect, while initiating a disciple, they tell him, now it is all your mind. That is to say, now it all depends on your mind. So what Sri Ramakrishna is hinting is, ultimately it is your own mind that gives it a positive or a negative color. The same person may see the world as a mart of joy. Sri Ramakrishna says the world does not change for us. The world is going to be like the dog's curly tail. No matter how much you try to straighten it, it will always remain curly. So, Swamiji says in his Karma Yoga to hope that one day the world will be perfect, there will be perfect people, good people, and the whole world will change. Many people have that ambition to correct everybody and try to tell everybody. Especially Swamiji says that in the Western world, I saw there are many systems of thought where they dream about an utopia, that we will bring peace on this earth. We will do this, we will do that. We will make all people follow a particular path. And what we feel is right, we try to impose it on other people. But India never did that. It gave us the freedom to have our own choices and just gave you the principles. And then he said, now it all depends on your mind. If you want to accept it, try, test it, accept it. If it gives you joy, gives you benefit, then you follow it. So the Karta Bhaja sect also, after initiating the disciple, they say, now what you want to do with it, you do it, because it is all between you, your Ishta, and your mind. If your mind accepts it, it will benefit. They say that he who has the right kind of mind acts correctly and achieves the right end. So, initiation is part of what mental training is all about. The rest of it, one has to struggle. One has to see that the mind is right kind of mind is applied, and one has to act correctly and achieve the right end. With the means is the initiation or the mantra, but the end has to be reached by one's own effort and mind. Of course, you can get help. Uh, there are other ways where our sadhana can be helped by other people or the circumstances. There are so many disciplines which have been prescribed which tell us how to create the right sort of environment. Those subsidiary help is not denied, but at the same time, one should have the mind. One should develop a taste for the name of the Lord, as Sri Ramakrishna said. One has to have some kind of taste, though one does not realize the importance or the significance of the repetition of the name, because it appears to be tasteless in the beginning. He said, what is there? I just repeat the same thing over and over again. People tend to get a little bit bored, because any kind of continuous, repetition or something like that, it makes it rather boring for a sadhaka. So they think, oh, this is something we have to do in a mechanical way, routine way. Is it really helping us? So that may not help, because if the mind does not develop a taste, Sri Ramakrishna says, if he doesn't have the right kind of mind, then the benefit of sadhana he may not achieve the right end. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna gives another example of Hanuman. Because of the powers of his mind, Hanuman could cross the ocean. What were the powers of his mind? What was the strong point he had? He had a strong mind. There is a beautiful shloka, Manojavam Maruti Tulya Vegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Varishtam. So, Hanuman is well known for not only a sharp and a wise mind, but he had other powers. He was Jitendriyam, means he had all his senses under control. He was fully concentrated in whatever task he undertook for the sake of Rama. So he used to have that kind of dedication, that kind of bhakti. I am a servant of Rama. I repeat his name. So what is impossible for me? He had that kind of faith. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna used to sometimes make fun that because of his faith, Hanuman could had such a strong mind and such might he had, that he did not require a bridge to cross the sea and reach Lanka, whereas Rama himself and his other army had to build a bridge to cross. But because of because of the faith in the name of Rama, because of the powers of the mind which he had developed, by this simple ahetuki bhakti, as they say. I am the servant of Rama. I repeat his name. What is impossible for me? So that firm conviction, it doesn't come so easily. I am part of the divine Lord, or I am a servant of the divine Lord. I am intimately connected in some way or the other. I am connected to the powerhouse of the cosmos, the cosmic powerhouse, and that is Ishvara. That Sachidananda is the powerhouse of which I am a part. So, and I am connected. How am I connected? By his name. So if I am connected, then what is impossible for me? Whatever in Ishvara can do, I can do. He had this faith. So because of that Sri Ramakrishna is saying, because of the power of his mind, due to faith, he uh, he had this faith, he could cross the ocean. Now, why can't we one see the Lord? Now, the very oft asked question in spiritual life is, what? Why can't all sadhakas see the Lord? Then the answer is, here Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain, because of one's ego. It's the ego that prevents, our limited ego, the idea of our limitedness, our our limited powers, our limited things which we run after, that increases our ego, and our identity is connected with something which is very trivial. I'm very happy if I am considered to be a council member or a member of parliament, and my ego gets inflated as if I have achieved everything in the world. Even a big king, even a king like Alexander, pride can kill him. He may think I'm the emperor of the world, but finally, when he died on his way back to Greece, he took some earth in his hand and said, after all this conquest, all I have as mine in the gross world is this handful of mud. Even that I have to, when I die, even that will be left behind. It will be buried with me. So I have nothing of my own. So an ego can be very harmful, and that is the reason Sri Ramakrishna says we cannot see the Lord. We cannot become one with the Ishvara, or one, we cannot realize him because of our egoism. Our egoism forces us to be what we are not. Our limited identity, uh, we are hijacked, as it were, by the ego and given a limited identity, a limited label, a limited role in life, and we think that is a very big role, though it may be the most insignificant thing. So when Alexander asked a Jain monk or a Buddhist monk who was sitting, they say, or maybe he was a Hindu philosopher, but anyway, he was renounced everything and he was very happy meditating. Seeing him so peaceful, so calm, Alexander thought that I should take him back to Greece. We need such wise men. So he said, I'll give you this, I'll give you money, try to tempt him. He said, I don't have any need. I'm happy here. I'm all the power and the money of the universe. They are useless for me. So you just keep it for yourself. I don't need it. So he started threatening him and said, I'll kill you if you don't come with me. He was insistent. He was arrogant. He was full of pride. So then the monk started laughing very loudly. He said, how can you kill me? You can kill my body, but I know I'm not the body. At the most, you can kill my body. That is the best you can do. But even that is not going to make me change my mind. I am the infinite, immutable spirit, and that spirit you can never kill. You may be the emperor of the material world, but that doesn't make any sense to me. So that kind of ego of, at a lower level, at a gross level, identifying ourselves with something which is very gross, which is transient, which is not even going to last uh, during the duration of our lifetime, and holding on to that and thinking that we are great, that ego prevents us from seeing, having the vision of God. So as long as one retains one's I-ness, that petty ego, kacha ami, as it is said in Bengali, one is ignorant. As long as egoism persists, there is no liberation. So if you really want mukti, then one has to give up, or one has to subdue one's ego. Now again comes a very beautiful example, which is very graphic. The way Sri Ramakrishna used to tell, you see, it's much better than most of the explanations of ego, ahankara, and all we find in Gita, Upanishads, and the other ancillary scriptures. There are so many scriptures which explain to us the futility of the ego, but it can be more graphic if a wonderful example like what Sri Ramakrishna's parables do. In fact, they are the gems. So Gems from the Gospel is a small compilation where all these parables, there are parables, tales and parables of Sri Ramakrishna. So the greater a prophet, the greater a spiritual person, the simpler he explains things, because he knows the value of simplicity. As Swamiji said, Swami Vivekananda once said, the greatest things are the most simplest things in this universe, as simple as your own existence. And it does not require an intelligent person to understand. Even a child can understand it. And more than understanding, it is how seriously you take it. We hear these examples, but finally we forget. And we think we are quite intelligent because we think these parables are so simple. Oh, we have done this course, that course, we listened to this talk, that talk, we have finished this Upanishad, that Upanishad. Everything is fine, but finally, what is your takeaway from that? What have you realized or experienced in life which tallies with what you heard? For that, Sri Ramakrishna uses certain very, very graphic examples or parables or similes which make you directly go to the point. And just meditating on that, a casual meditation, deep meditation, thinking about those parables will give you a wonderful insight into what spiritual life or what worldly life is really about. For example, that's why we converted many of the parables and tales of Sri Ramakrishna into pictures. These graphic pictures, when you see, it reminds you of some great philosophical truth. So, it clearly demonstrates that these great philosophical truths, these wonderful, uh, uh, not just philosophical truths, truths which can alter your life, which can transform your life, which can really give you peace, fulfillment, and joy, need not be explained through uh, polemics or different techniques of uh, scriptural understanding, which we use. Normally, people think it is a great thing to master the scriptures, and people find a lot of pride in doing that. But sometimes we find that these parables are more powerful and more educative and more transformative in nature than the reading mere dry understanding of scriptures is concerned. I'm not saying they are not important. People who are increasingly intellectual or do not have a simple faith, unfortunately, they have to resort to those things. That is their karma. But people who are born with childlike faith, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, it's a result of great sadhana or tapasya done in the previous birth that one becomes as simple as a child. So if one is born by the grace of the Lord with that simplicity, like Sri Ramakrishna had in his own life, we could see his childhood. It was simple, direct, uncomplicated. So his methods are also very uncomplicated. He doesn't ask you to do this, do that. But you see the examples he gives, if we meditate on that, they are enough to give us conviction, and that will give rise to transformation. So what is the example he is giving? Just to say that ego is bad, everybody seems to be saying, oh, ahankar is a bad thing. Why? Because Gita says, because Upanishad says, because our scripture say. But what does it mean? Why it is bad? What will be the effect of that? to give a graphic idea of what this ego is and what it does, he takes an example from our day-to-day life, which is so powerful that the very idea of being egotistic becomes disgusting to us. See the example he gives. Cows, he says, bellow hamba hamba, and the goats bleat me me me. Me means in uh, hamba means I hum or aham. Aham, the word hamba has connections with the word aham. So me and mine, me, mine, and aham, aham and mama. These are words which are there in almost every language. Mamata, or that means my, uh, the the idea that this is mine, that is known as mamata, that adjective. And we also have aham, that is ego. So amba amba, the cows, or whether it is a cow or a goat, both of them say me, and that is why may, that is the sound which see, Sri Ramakrishna is taking this example, a live example from day-to-day life, and he says for this reason they have to suffer a lot. The butcher slaughters them and makes shoes, drums and hides out of their skin. So the suffering doesn't end with killing. Because of this ego, I mean, what he wants to say is giving an example how these animals continue to suffer even after their death. There is no end to their suffering. The butcher not only slaughters and eats the flesh, but also uses the skin. So there is no end to their suffering. In the Hindi language, hum and may both mean I. Sri Ramakrishna is now trying to giving an example, trying to show us what this hum and hamba and may of the goat means. When the may goat means in Hindi, may means I, and hum means hamba. The word hamba has been derived from hum, means us. Both mean I. Hum also can mean myself, or it can mean myself in a plural. But anyway, ourselves. It can mean ourselves, but it can mean myself also. Hum. And may means in it's more of mine. It's not just I. May means mine. So mine or maybe may. So it leads to more and more suffering. That is the idea. Then he says the suffering doesn't end there. No doubt it kills both the cow and the goat who utter these sounds. But at last the butcher makes strings with the guts of these animals. After not only using the flesh, even their skin is tanned and used as chappals, drums and hides are made, and then they are beaten day and night. They are beaten. He gives a graphic example. He says that tabla is made and then people go on beating it. So even after death, their skin also gets a beating. And finally the butcher makes, finally however, when the ego has been given a nice battering day and night, then the butcher makes with the guts of that animal. Even that is not spared. The guts which are there, they are taken, and then they make, the carder uses the string. Kaiser uses the string in his bow, which is made of this, the guts. They string and they produce the sound tuhu tuhu. So in Hindi, tuhu tuhu, or in Bengali also, tuhu means you. So the idea here is, it is only when one says you, not me, that one is saved and there is no more suffering. So by giving this wonderful example, Sri Ramakrishna is trying to tell us, give us such a not only pertinent but such a graphic description of the pain caused by ego, that one starts getting, at least, if not, if one is sincere and takes this parable seriously, he will start getting disgusted with his or her own ego. And then finally he gets a solution when said, only when you say tuhu, when one has undergone all these sufferings. Oh Lord, you are the doer, I am not the doer. This is what constitutes jnana, or spiritual wisdom. So it is only when you come to the end of your suffering, and then you say, oh yes, then you recognize that this ego is the mischief monger, it creates all the problems. Then spiritual wisdom dawns. And then we say that it constitutes jnana. Then Sri Ramakrishna gives another example. As I told you, he learned all these things from nature. He didn't have to go to university or college for all these things. He says it is only when you become lowly that you can rise. The chatak bird has its nest near the ground, but it can soar at high altitudes. Now, this is a strange kind of bird where Sri Ramakrishna used to say it drinks water only from by gathering the raindrops in its beak. It just keeps its mouth open. It flies and it does not drink a drop of water that flows on the ground or is collected on the ground. So neither river water nor pond. Once it touches the ground, the chatak bird feels that it is not worth tasting. So though it has its nest, the nest, of course, it can't lay eggs in space, but it can soar, it can go to high altitudes. So Sri Ramakrishna seems to be saying that if you have humility in life, you can achieve a lot. You can make a lot of spiritual progress. This graphic example is giving here. Then he says, farming is not possible at high elevations. You need low land to farm. Water only collects on low land, only there cultivation. This is another beautiful example Sri Ramakrishna is giving. How to explain why humility is necessary, why egolessness is necessary in spiritual life. Even if you want to farm, do a simple thing as farming, you need some low land, because if the land is very high, things do not grow on a slope. Things may grow, but cultivation is more suitable on low lands. If it is the top of the hill, very few things grow there because the water doesn't collect. Whereas if you go to the base of the mountain, there you will find that lot of water gets collected. There are springs because all the water which is on the top, it percolates down, and then you get uh, only there the cultivation is possible. So here, by these three wonderful examples, Sri Ramakrishna is trying to give a graphic description of how ego causes problems in our life and how lack of ego or humility solves those problems. Now, how these things are to be, the conversation is still continuing. How these things are to be practiced. Why don't we get rid of our ego? Why our ego is not subdued or controlled by ourselves? So what is the solution for that? So Sri Ramakrishna says, company of holy people or sadhus essential for the householders. And then the topic is, who is truly poor? So what does poverty mean in real life terms? So Sri Ramakrishna says one should take a little trouble to seek the company of the holy, because at home one only has a tendency to talk of worldly matters. There is always one ailment or the other. It's the nature of a household where people have pursuits which are material in nature. Then there is some ailment, some problem, some issue. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, the parrot says Rama, Rama only when it settles on a perch. While flying through the jungle, it only squawks. So when it is in a jungle, when it is in a worldly atmosphere, it will make a lot of noise. Only when it goes and settles down in solitude. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to give so much importance to Nirjanvas. So, or you seek the company of the holy, where you get the more benefit than solitude. Solitude, the risk is that in solitude also you may take your company with you. As Sri Ramakrishna mentioned in the beginning of this class, that that yearning for more wealth and more friends, that is, and more friends, in what he meant was more company. So the more wealth you have, the more you have a tendency to attract more people, because friends will come when there is more money. So that seeking the company of people who are more interested in your money than you, that is the way of the world. That is why he says, at home one will talk only of worldly matters, because Otherwise, why will you be in the world? People will come to you, they won't come to you for spiritual advice. That you have to go and seek the company of the holy wherever you get it. So some ailment or the other, some problem or the other, based on gains and losses in the world, will be there. So the parrot, as the parrot which says, when it is flying through the jungle, it will squawk. But if it is on a perch, it is perched on a particular place where some holy person is repeating the name of Rama, it has a tendency to repeat that. But when it is in a worldly atmosphere, it will just quack like in a jungle. And then finally, Sri Ramakrishna says, money does not make a man great. A sign of wealthy man is light in every room. See, it doesn't physically mean physical light. The poor do not have money to spend on oil, so they can't have that many lights. You see, one must not keep the temple. He is giving an example that a sign of a rich man in material terms is that that house is full of light. But if one is poor materially, he will not have, he has no money. In those days there were oil lamps, not electricity, but even electric lights also require money. So you can't have many lights. So the sign of poverty in a worldly setting is light. There is light in every room. That was the standard. Oh, this person has a fully illuminated house, and the other person is quite dark because he doesn't want to spend, he doesn't have money to spend on oil. So also he says, in one should not keep this temple of Lord, the body, in darkness. One must light the lamp of Jnana. So light the lamp of Jnana in the house, then only you can see the face of Brahmamayi. So then he will say the real meaning of prayer and marks of spiritual awakening. We don't have much time, so we will take up that topic in the next Sunday class. I'll just see if there are any questions. You can just ask in the chat. But Sri Ramakrishna ends by saying here, this particular topic, that the light of the lamp of Jnana is in the house, and they see the face of Mother Brahmamayi only then when the light is there. That means if there is spiritual poverty, if you don't have money to light the lamp, the oil lamp, then there will be darkness. You cannot see, have the vision of Mother. So the sign of the condition of seeing Mother Brahmamayi in your heart, or in the center of your heart, is to light the lamp of Jnana in the darkness which is there. So the darkness of ignorance, the moment it goes, the spiritual ignorance that you have, which is compared to darkness, you have the light with which you can have the vision of your Divine Mother. So we end here, and I'll just see if there is any question. So the question is it is clear that the simplicity light comes after passing through the complexity, dark channel. Is that so? Not necessarily. Now, in our sequence of our life, we do not know how many times we have passed through darkness or complexity. It may come, as Swami Vivekananda said, pain has taught me more than pleasure in life. But that sequence is always going on. So it's not that only simplicity or the light and the uncomplicated nature which everybody exhibits is a result of being result of the pain felt because of our crookedness or cunning nature. You see, whenever you are a complicated person, you have to be ready for equally complicated people coming and complicating your life. So a person, though he may feel that he is very mature and he is very shrewd in the worldly sense, he may be shrewd, but the world will always have people who are shrewder than him. And when he loses, he feels the pain and pangs. He said, all my intelligence, all my chalaki, or whatever I felt was my strong point, has not been of any use. At that time, he feels pain, and as your question implies, that simplicity comes only after that. Yes, that is one way it may come, but it is not necessary. In most of the cases, it comes like that, but sometimes people are born with that. Of course, you may say it is because of your past karma, as Sri Ramakrishna says. It can come from tapasya also. It can come from a strong sense of discrimination. If a person has intelligence and if he sees the suffering, one does not have to suffer if one can learn from the suffering of others. So it is very imperative that we learn from the sufferings of others. We don't have to wait. For example, a child who is intelligent sees another child touching the fire and getting burnt and shouting and crying. Now, if he is sensitive enough, he should know that if I do it, it doesn't require rocket science to learn this, to get this wisdom. You just have to see, keep your eyes and ears open. So if we keep our eyes and ears open, then we don't have to pass through the channel of complexity, as you have asked. Why should we always go through the dark channel to get light? If we see somebody entering a dark channel and getting suffering from that, we can learn our lessons remotely and we can get the light or become simple ourselves. So simplicity is something not, it doesn't come to, it comes to many people naturally also. But to acquire that, one has to be observant, one has to be alert and learn from the sufferings of others. Yes. So how does one can realize if one, or no, you cannot, if one has an ego, the problem is two things cannot be. That is why uh, Jesus said in the Bible that you can't have God and mammon at the same time. Now, what do you mean by this? It appears to be a very simple statement, but it is full of depth of meaning. Mammon means that which is I and mine. Now, ego, why do we go after these temporary things? Because I think this is mine. I think the wealth is mine, the body is mine. They are our mind. Definitely, it is so difficult to get rid of that feeling because it has become a habit with us. The house is mine. This property is mine. Maybe I'm staying only in one room, but you feel the mansion is mine. You get a strange kind of satisfaction that I'm living in a 15-bedroom house, whereas I'm all I need maybe one cot and a small area for myself. You're not going to live in all the 15 rooms, but still that aham and mamatva, that attachment to say this is my house, this is my mansion, and the bigger the mansion is, the more puffed the ego becomes. So one cannot realize, because then we run after these things which give us temporary happiness. As Sri Ramakrishna beautifully expressed, that the mother doesn't bother if the child runs after toys, because for the child the toy is something very important. If the toy is more important, then she allows him to play with the toy. But the moment he realizes that this toy is not giving him the joy he wanted, then he starts crying. And when he cries, the Lord comes. The spirituality begins when you cry not in a negative way. You feel some kind of futility in the things, in the toys which you have enjoyed so far. Till that stage comes, one cannot get rid of the ego, because to give up a small toy or a small thing, the child resists a lot. Only when it is tired, then it gives up its ego and then he says, I don't want this toy. So there is a beautiful example given that children, when they are very young, that is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say 5-year-old people are like Paramahamsas. They have that nature, but unfortunately they are ignorant. Otherwise, they would have realized God. They create all these, from wet sand, they create all sorts of structures in the sand. They very little, when they are doing it, they are full of concentration and they build this beautiful thing. But at the same time, when the time comes for them to go home, when the parents say, now you have to go home, you can't play with this anymore, it's getting dark, then they just go and kick that whatever they have constructed, whatever they have built painfully, they just don't care and they just kick it and they feel joy in that. Whereas a human being doesn't feel. The more he grows, the more complicated he becomes. He finds it very, very painful to give up the things which he has built for himself. It may be a small thing. It doesn't mean that only rich people have this problem. Even Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a person who has very little possession, just a kamandalu, even when he loses that kamandalu, he feels he has lost something. So it's a relative thing. But what I say is that what Sri Ramakrishna is implying, that when children give up the need, when that ego of possessing small things go, ego is by itself not bad. You have to remember this thing. By itself, ego is not bad. The kacha ami and the paka ami. That is why Sri Ramakrishna, to make things very easy, he said there are two types of ego. You cannot be without ego. No person can be without ego till he realizes his oneness with Brahman. So that does that mean that ego is bad? So he said, okay, if the ego is there, it's fine. The kacha ami, or the unripe ego, which goes after smaller things, transitory things, that is bad. Going after Lord, or going after the infinite existence, knowledge and bliss, something that will make you fulfilled for your entire life, going after that is known as pakami. You may not have reached that state, but at least you are progressing, and with the ego that I am the Lord's, I am part of the Lord, I cannot be separated from the Lord. There's so many attitudes you can have with God. If you have that, then you become it becomes a storehouse of infinite goodness, infinite wealth, not in the material sense, because material wealth has limitation. Even if you possess a big portion of a town or a city or an area, still your wealth is limited compared to what the whole world has. And there will be competitors, there will be jealousy and so many things. So giving up that limited ego, which is kacha ami, which is focused on things which are dragging you down, and focusing it on higher things, and being proud that you are a child of the Lord, you are a disciple of such and such. So that ego, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, pakami, the ripe ego. So that kind of ego is good. So we have to distinguish between the type of ego we are developing. One ego takes you towards the destruction, the other ego takes you towards the Lord. So I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste.
Namaste, Pranam. Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj. Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Swamiji. Hari Om.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Pranam Maharaj.
Pranam Maharaj.